All right, hello, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to class today. Thank you for joining me for this video. My name is Jenny. This is going to be a Core and Restore class. Feel free to grab any props that you'd like to use through your practice. I often give cues for uses of blocks or blankets, bolsters, anything like that. And when we get to the restore part, it's nice sometimes to support yourself a little bit with some props. So take a moment to gather whatever you've got, whatever you want to use. And before we jump in today, kind of one thing that I want to focus on is I try to, when I make mistakes, to own up to it, especially as a teacher. And as I continue to learn more and to take more trainings and to dig deeper into a lot of my own stuff, I tend to realize things that I have taught in the past that may have been harmful. And one thing that was recently brought to my attention is that I could be potentially promoting some body shaming. And that is definitely something that I don't want to do. And there is a big difference between being held accountable and just being straight up shamed. And I'll do another class on that topic of the idea of accountability versus just being shamed, whether you're doing it to yourself or to others or someone's doing it to you. But one thing is when taking accountability is to admit when you have been doing something wrong and then course correct. And recognizing that while you were doing the best you could with the information that you had, now when you have more information, you can do better. So one thing that I have been realizing in my teachings is that maybe some of the poses that I teach aren't necessarily as accessible. And so that is one way that I could be potentially promoting body shaming is if I cue a pose that is not accessible to your body. So I always try to give different variations, different options, and I'm going to continue to do that, but even more in depth. I'm going to keep giving more and more options, and know that it's not an attempt to overwhelm you. It's not like when you go to the grocery store looking for barbecue sauce and you have 27 different choices to choose from. And I'm just trying to give you plenty of options so that anyone that is doing this class can find something that they can do where they find the engagement, the activation, whatever the purpose of that pose is, that you are able to find that within your own body. So know that everything that I say is simply a suggestion, just kind of a guideline for your practice, but it's your practice, it's your body. Honor your body. That is really one of the biggest one of the biggest things that I would love for you to take away from these classes is to honor your body. And in the past I have said, love your body, which is great, but not always easy. And everyone goes through phases where they don't love something about themselves, men and women. Women are typically, we carry a little more of that burden in just that we are mostly firstly judged based on our looks, but men experience it too. And know that even the most beautiful, quote unquote perfect person, they're gonna not like something about their bodies. And so how I'm gonna kind of change the verbiage there is instead of building, learning to love your body, it's more respecting your body. So that's kind of what I want to focus on a little bit today is respecting your body where it is, accepting it as it is, and taking a level of accountability for where your body is. And I'll get a little more into that as we get into class a little bit more, but that's kind of what we want to focus on. So with that in mind, a little bit of rambling there, let's get started. So we'll start in child's pose today. So you'll want to come down to hands and knees. And then if you can, if it feels good, with the toes pointed, sending the hips back towards the heels as you lower the head and chest down. Now this might not feel awesome in the knees. You could kneel on a blanket, you could double up on the mat. And if the hips don't go back towards the heels, no problem. You're welcome to have the hips raised as you lower the chest down. You could also bring in a blanket, a rolled up mat, something like that, across, even a bolster or a cushion across the knees. Give yourself a little cushion. And as you lower down the head and chest, Know that they don't have to come all the way down towards the ground. You could also bring in props. You could bring in a block or a book to rest the head. We want to extend through the arms. Find some length in the spine. And then just start to breathe. Start to connect to your breath, opening up through the back side of the body. And again, maybe the hips are raised in more of a puppy pose as you lower down. And if it doesn't feel good at all to be on the knees, you could lay all the way down on the belly. And just taking some time to start to check in. Starting to notice how you're feeling, where you're feeling it. And starting to notice your breath. And as you feel ready, beginning to deepen the breath. Maybe the belly is resting on the thighs, and you can start to feel the rise and fall of the breath as you breathe deep into the belly. Checking in with the body, just taking stock, taking gauge of where you are, noticing any areas of tension or tenderness, anywhere that may need a little extra love today. And then if it would feel good, just maybe start to bring in a little swaying side to side. If you'd like, you could even come up onto the fingertips, tenting through the hands, which creates a little more space between you and the ground. Maybe dipping down a little bit, working a little bit through the spine as you rock side to side. Walking the fingers over towards the right, getting a nice side stretch through that left side body. Continuing to breathe, reaching out through the fingertips. You could even shift the left hip slightly out towards the left, just to get a little more sensation there. When you're ready, walking back, the fingers back towards center, and then walking them over towards the left. A nice side body stretch. Breathing into the right side of the body. When you're ready, walking the fingers back towards center. And just a few more rounds of breath here in child's pose. Again, if you want to take a little rocking side to side, or maybe start to bring in a little cat-cow movement, so kind of arching and rolling through the spine. You won't have a ton of range of motion since we're bowed forward over the legs, but you could just bring in a little movement here. If you feel ready, we'll start to lift the hips, coming up through a tabletop. If you have any props in between the legs or over the legs, feel free to remove those. Spread out through the hands. If you need, maybe kick back through the feet, kind of get some circulation going back. And then we're going to move through some spinal flexion here. So we're going to inhale to lengthen through the spine. Exhale, draw the elbows together, shift the hips forward, slowly lower all the way down towards the belly. Press into the tops of the feet. Inhale, we're going up to a cobra. Maybe it's a baby cobra, maybe it's a mid cobra, maybe it's a little higher. Deep inhale and exhale to lower down. Now we're going to play here with cobra a few rounds. So you're welcome to just kind of find a little wave here if you'd like, up and down, linking the breath to the movement. Hands could stay planted, or they could even start to hover. They could even start to reach back, creating a little more activation here. So lifting and lowering. So working through some spinal flexion, just building up some strength in the back of the core. We're pressing into the tops of the feet and just taking it to whatever height feels good, to whatever level of activation feels good for you. And know that the different options that I give are not ranked good, better, best, beginning, intermediate, advanced. You know, I'm not giving to work towards. I'm just giving you different options that could make this a little more passive of a practice, a little more active as a practice, and for you to be able to gauge where you are and decide what's best for you. Hands here, and maybe it's just coming up into cobra and holding here. Focusing on drawing the shoulders back, shoulder blades pinched together, chest shining forward as you activate through the legs. Beautiful work. One more deep inhale and exhale, lower all the way down. Elbows draw together, hands plant underneath the shoulders, and then we'll press our way back up to our tabletop. Fantastic work. Now from here, we're just reach the right toes back. Toes could stay planted on the ground or the leg could start to hover. Now really focus on keeping the hips squared so that that right hip bone is shining down towards the ground and the right toes are pointing down towards the ground. We're spreading out through the hands and we're finding our balance there. So press evenly into both hands as you lengthen out through the crown of the head. Gaze towards the ground so you have a nice neutral neck. Awesome work. Now we're just going to work with a little bit of rotation in the leg while keeping the hips squared. That right hip is still shining down towards the ground, right toes pointing down. We're going to inhale, turn the right toes out towards the right, but just rotate through the leg. Keep the hips squared, and then exhale to bring the toes back down towards the ground. So really subtle movement here, little external right leg. We want to try to keep the left knee underneath the left hip so we're not shifting back and forth. It's okay if there's a little shift. And again, that right hip bone stays shining down towards the ground. You might be feeling this in the glutes and the hamstrings, maybe down into the quad or into the ham. What is that called? Your calf. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to keep playing with rotation, but this time we're going to add the hips. So with the toes pointed down, right hip squared, we'll inhale to start to turn the toes out to the right, but this time we'll start to lift through the right hip, bringing the left hip underneath and start to open up through the hips, and then rotate back down. Awesome work. So we're still keeping both hands planted on the ground, so that's bringing in a little bit of twisting. And just notice the difference of when you are rotating just through the leg, and now what you're bringing in the pelvis and the hips. Subtle movements, but you're probably feeling it a little here. I definitely am, or maybe feeling it a lot. Okay, now from here, you're welcome to continue to work with this rotation. Maybe it's helping you to build mobility. If you want to take it a little further, then as you open up through the hip, you can start to lift the right hand up towards the sky. So we're coming into this variation of side plank. Now you're welcome to lower the right toes down. This is definitely a challenge for the balance. So the right toes can be pointed towards the ground, or they could be hovering. If they're hovering, flex your foot. Fantastic work. And what we want is to have the left hand, the left knee, and the right toes if they're pointed on the ground. So we kind of have a little line of balance here. Awesome work. Feel free to stay here. This is a challenge. If you want to bring more in the oblique, we'll inhale to extend bicep by the ear, And exhale, crunch through the side. Maybe the elbow and knee come together. Inhale, re-extend. Exhale, crunch it in. Again, this is just an option. And you don't even need to take the crunch very far. You could even keep the legs extended and just work through that oblique. Challenging for the balance here. Fantastic work. One more deep inhale. And on the exhale, release it all the way down. Come back through hands and knees. The hips. Chest shifts back. And feel free to pedal out through the feet. Shake your head yes or no. Awesome work. A few more rounds of breath here in our in our downward dog. You can take child's pose too. And if you want this practice to be a little more restful. Okay, when you're ready, nice and slow, we're going to come pose on to our hands and knees. So we're going to bend in the knees, hips stay shifted back. We're still lengthening through the spine. Core is engaged. And then take the knees all the way down to the ground. Awesome work. We'll switch it out to the other side so as you find your solid connection to the hands, lengthen through the spine, belly draws in, and we'll start to extend the left toes back. And they could stay on the ground. They could hover an inch or two, or the leg could come parallel to the hips. If the leg is hovering, toes are flexed down, left hip, the pelvis through the hips. Awesome work. Nice isolated movement. Noticing what's firing up. I feel it in my glute, I feel it in my inner left thigh. Maybe different from where you're feeling it. Tune in. Continue to breathe. All right. Open up motion as you rotate through the leg. Bring the hips in, starting to stack the left hip on top of right. Right hip bone kind of shifts underneath. And then rotate back. So if you're bringing in the pelvis, this is working a little twisting action too in the mid and low back. We're still distributing the weight evenly between the hands, laying through the spine. All right, feel free to stay here if this is what you want to work on today. Or if you maybe want to bring in a little more challenge for the balance as you open through the hips, start to raise that left arm up towards the heart or up towards the sky. Hips nice and open, stacked. This is a challenge for the balance. Awesome work. And you could always lower those left toes down. If they're raised up, you could bring in a little oblique work. It could be very subtle, just working the torso, getting that oblique. Or you could reach out through the limbs on an inhale and exhale, elbow and knee come together. So your choice, what you want to explore here. Awesome. More deep inhale and exhale, release it back down, coming to our tabletop. Your choice here, if you want to send the hips back to a child's pose, lower the chest down to puppy pose, or lift the hips into downward dog. Your choice for a few rounds of breath. You can also take a break, grab some water. But connect to your breath. I'm sweating. Hopefully you are. Feel that heat building up in the body. And it's crazy. Build up heat just from those subtle, small little movements. All right, when you're ready, we're gonna meet in downward dog. So take your there. A few little cues for our down dog. We want our heels rooting towards the ground, but they don't need to touch. You can bend as little or as you like, especially if that helps keep the spine nice and straight as the chest comes towards the thighs. So sometimes we work to have the legs straight and it forces us to round out in the spine. I'd prefer you to have the knees bent so you can get that nice extended spine. All right, so we're gonna repeat what we did on hands and knees, but this time in downward dog. You are always lower to the knees and take it again from there. But when you feel ready, we'll start to raise that right. Again, the toes may just hover a little bit. They may be a little bit off the ground. They may be higher. But wherever the leg is, doesn't really matter. But keep the toes active, keep the hips squared. Nice work. And then we'll start to bring in that rotation just through the leg. So the top of the femur is rotating in the hip socket. So we're just turning the right toes out towards the right, but that right hip bone is shutting down towards the ground. Fantastic work. If you want a little bit more, start to rotate through the hips. Keeping that leg extended at first. A few more rounds of breath here. And then when you're ready, to scorpion, if you'd like. So that left hip shifting underneath the right. And if it would feel good, bring the heel towards the glute, knee up towards the ceiling. Now, just like we had in hands and knees, with that leg extended, we want the shoulders pretty squared here. So we're bringing in a little twisting, and the weight is still evenly distributed between the hands. So we're not drawing to that left shoulder. We're not putting too much weight into the left wrist. Awesome work. All right, inhale, re-extend, three-legged dog. Exhale, start to step the foot between the hands. Take your time to get there. You can lower the knee down, even physically place the foot between the hands. Take your time. That takes strength, that takes flexibility. Sometimes just the way we're built, we're not able to step the foot forward. So take your time to get there. We'll be in a low lunge here. Feel into this opening in the hips, maybe a little shifting forward and back. You could bring in blocks or books here to bring the ground closer. Fantastic work. When you're ready, we'll start to straighten the leg as we root back. So both legs are straight. The stance is still pretty wide. So we're in a wide-legged pyramid. Head is bowing forward. It doesn't need to come all the way to the knee. And again, you could have blocks bring the ground closer, especially if you have tight hamstrings or tight low back. Awesome work. From here, we're going to step forward to a forward fold. So we'll start to shift the weight forward, kick the back leg up, and then step it down to meet the right. Inhale to a half lift, lengthening out through the spine, and exhale, fold it in. A few rounds of breath here. Let it all hang out. Shake the head yes or no. Maybe grab opposite elbows, side to side. When you're ready, release the arm down, release the head. Inhale, half lift. So the chest comes parallel to the ground, head extends, hands can come to the shins, to the thighs. Just getting a nice little blood flow back to the brain, letting the sweat drip off my nose. All right, inhale, lengthen. Exhale, bow it forward. Inhale, send the arms out to the side, bend in the knees and start to raise up. Little reverse swan dive to standing, the right knee up. Awesome work, challenging the balance here, working the hip flexor. Arms could be reaching, they could come to the goalpost, they could come to the hips. Now, we have some hip mobility, so just start to move the leg around. Challenging the balance, but also getting a little creative. This is a little move I stole from Perry Lang, one of our other Mosaic instructors. Took a class with him and remembered how kind of fun it is. You could get the arms kind of weird, you could bring in some modern dance type of stuff. Just kind of work through that range of motion. Challenging that balance, so really rooting down into that left foot. Awesome. And when you're ready, we're going to plug into tree. So you want to bring that external rotation. The knee is opening, the hip is opening. And you can just have the toes planted, little kickstand here. Also, bring the foot up towards the calf. Hands could be at hips, prayer, doing whatever you'd like. You could also bring the foot up to the inner thigh. And often we're told to avoid putting the foot on the kneecap or on the knee joint. Now, if that's what feels best for you, go ahead and try it. I would say maybe avoid putting pressure. So there's a plug here that you can do when you have the foot on the thigh or down by the calf. You can press the foot into the leg back into the foot, and it creates kind of this, tension that you can kind of hold. If that's how you're practicing your tree pose, don't put the foot right on the knee. But if you're just kind of hovering the foot there, not really plugging in, it's totally fine to put it at the knee. Awesome work. Challenging that balance. Arms can be doing whatever for counterbalance or creating your branches blowing in the wind. Nice. How's that left foot? Okay, very cool. From here, we're going to close that knee. So we're going to release the foot. Maybe even extend it out. Oof, that always is my quad and my hip flexor. Here, we're going to send that leg all the way back. We're going to try to balance through a warrior three. And then the foot back to low lunge. Inhale, reach the arm towards the sky. Release them down, plant the hands, draw. Choice from here, you could just lift the hips, downward dog. Or you could position. You could push up all the way to the belly. You could come up to cobra, whatever version. Or hover the legs and come up back. Make your way to downward dog, however you'd like to do it. All right, let's take the side. So when you feel ready, we'll just start to raise that left leg up. All right, if you're still with me, we're going to start to rotate through the whole hip girdle. So bringing the pelvis in, starting to turn the toes out to the side, and the hips start to open. And then coming back to square. You could bend the knee towards the ceiling, start to find a scorpion pose. Knee lifts up. And then again, we want a nice solid connection to the hands, nice squaring through the shoulders. So we've got our solid base, our squared shoulders, and then we've got a little twisting action through the hips. Nice work. Inhale, re-extend through the leg, and exhale, start to step the foot between the hands and take as many steps as you need. Feel free to lower the right knee down to lift the foot up. Find your way to our nice low lunge, maybe forward. getting a nice hip flexor. And then we'll take it into a hamstring and quad stretch by straightening through the front leg, finding our wide leg pyramid. We're rooting down towards that right heel. Definitely doesn't need to touch. And you could bring in blocks to bring the ground closer. You want to release the head and neck down. And if it feels better to step the back foot in, shorten the stance, getting that heel down, definitely feel free to take that. A couple more rounds of breath here. And then when you're ready, we'll start forward. So we're going to shift the weight forward, kick the back leg up, and then step the right foot down to meet the left. Another forward fold here. And maybe shaking the head. You could grab opposite elbows. You could pedal through the feet. You could shake the booty. And then we'll take our half lift. Inhale to hover the chest, spine extended. Again, hands could come to the shins, the thighs, the hips. They could even extend if you want to hover. Nice deep inhale to lengthen. Exhale, fold it in. Inhale, reverse swan dive. Send the arms out to the side as you start to raise it up. Up and overhead. Exhale, prayer hands, heart center. Awesome work. Here. And first of all, just check in. Notice how your feet are. Notice the position. And if it feels okay in the knees and the hips, just kind of check out what default is and check in with the body. And then maybe out wider. Maybe bring them in closer. Maybe put the heels of the toes or the heels. Just kind of play around and find. Feel free to get a little weird with it. A little creative, and don't be afraid to fall out. If you're not falling, you're not trying. Just kidding. But no shame in falling. That's what balance is. Balance isn't something that you attain and once you get it. It's one of those things that you constantly work at, constantly making little subtle shifts and adjustments, constantly taking in different information to maintain balance. And sometimes you fall out. Sometimes we get out of balance, out of whack. That's okay. Come right back. All right, when you're ready, we're gonna plug into our tree. So you could kickstand the toes. Use it as a nice little resting spot there. You can also plug the foot into the calf or into the upper thigh. That plugging in is the foot and leg equal and opposite pressure back on each other, so it kind of locks it in. We've got that opening in the hips, that external rotation. Awesome work. Hands can be doing whatever. In a little modern dancey today in my wrestler's outfit. All right. If you want an extra challenge in your tree, close your eyes. And again, don't worry if you fall out. If you find yourself taking your practice too serious, close the door on the knee, release the foot, and again, maybe that leg, ooh, see? Everyone balance practice, maybe that leg extends. Nice work. And then we're gonna start to send it back, coming through our warrior three, and then stepping it back to our high lunge. Inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, release it down, take your time, no rush. Hands, draw the foot back through plank. And again, your choice, choose your own adventure. You could take a child's pose. You could lower down to chaturanga or to the belly. Cobra or upward dog, all the way down. And we're coming back to our child's pose. You're welcome to keep the knees in line with the hips if that feels good. Or take the knees out wide, big toes come to touch, and then as you shift the hips back, coming into a wide leg child's pose. Again, honor. If it feels better to have the hips raised, coming down into puppy, feel free. If it feels better to lower down onto a cushion, a bolster, pillow heaven, whatever you'd like, feel free. And again, if child's pose doesn't feel awesome for you, you're welcome to lie on the belly. Fantastic work. As you feel ready, we'll slowly start to come back to our tabletop, and we're going to make our way to a seated position. So however you'd like to get there, you could swing the legs around. Just take your time, taking a seat, and sit near the middle of your mat. You've got some space behind you to lie back. But before we do, let's take some seated cat-cow, knees bent. You can take feet out a little wider than hip distance. And we'll have a little more range of motion here than we did in our child's pose cat-cow. So inhale to lift through the chest, gaze lifts, little arching through the spine. And exhale, we round out, the chin tucks in towards the chest. Awesome, we're gonna take a few more rounds here. Up nice and tall. If it helps, you can sit on a blanket or a bolster or even a cushion, something like that, to help get that lift. And we want to keep the spine nice and straight, core drawing in, ribs hugging in. Awesome work. Now you kind of want to lean back a little bit, and if you want to keep the hands on the knees or behind the knees, you are welcome to. Or you could let the hands release. Now the more we lie back, the more challenging this is going to be. And we don't want to round out. We want to keep lifting through the chest. Imagine a string pulling your heart up towards the sky. And maybe the feet start to hover. Maybe just one at a time, maybe both. Right now our knees are wide. If it would feel better to bring the knees together, feel free. And a sneaky way to get you into boat pose. Awesome work. Nice static hold, belly drawing in. All right, now we're going to take it all the way down to the ground. Your choice if you boat first and then lie back, or maybe start to open up to a low boat. It's okay if you shake. Embrace the shake. Ooh, I'm shaking a lot. And then slowly make your way all the way down to the ground. Feel free to fire to the mouth. Send the arms overhead. Stretch out through the legs. Nice morning stretch. Maybe a little side stretching, creating a little arching side to side, just moving the hands and moving the feet back. So hopefully it's a little release for the hips and low back. You're welcome to pause on each side for a few ticks, getting a little deeper into the twist. Arms can be doing whatever feels awesome. I usually bring them to the hips or rest them on the belly, but they could also extend to T or into goalposts. Awesome work. When you're ready, we'll just lean the legs up the wall. got yourself an inversion. So you can hang out here. Awesome, nice release for the low back, getting the legs above the heart. You could come into a supported shoulder stance with the feet on the ground, lifting through the hips, sliding a block or a bolster, something underneath, coming through a supported bridge, and then extending the legs up. Just another variation. You could also take full shoulder stance, so up you're still lifting, come up higher, and the hands will come to the low back. Fingers pointing up towards the heels. And the elbows are drawing together. The weight is on the triceps and the shoulders. There's no weight in the neck. Variations for you to explore. And getting the legs above the heart. And then if it feels good, just to chill out, let the legs hang out, stay here. You could wiggle through the toes, maybe spread them out, point and flex, roll out through the ankles. You could bring in larger movements. You could shake out through the legs or send them out wide or scissor them. Feel the effects of gravity. Maybe even look up and get a little different perspective. And continue to check in with the breath. It's often easier to stay connected to the breath when there's more activity, when we're working the body more. So when we start to slow things down, that's when the mind's like, oh, I can put the body on autopilot and I'm free to wander. So stay connected to the breath. Stay connected to your body. And if the body is telling you, put your legs down or do something different, listen. That is how we honor our body. It's how we show respect for our body. Beautiful work. When you feel ready, whichever version of your inversion you're in, so to lower the legs down, lower the feet down. If you're in a supported version, move the prop. And we'll just come back to neutral and then take whatever feels good here to kind of reset. Maybe another round of windshield wipers, maybe knees in towards the chest, maybe it's a happy baby. Just listen to the body, give it whatever it is that it's asking for. And allow yourself to get into a pose where you feel like you could surrender, where you feel like you could release the tension in the body, you could any control. And to where you could maybe settle into the mind a little bit, knowing that we actually turn our mind off. Those thoughts are constant. We have something like over 10,000 thoughts a day. But this is a time to recognize that we are not our thoughts. Some of our thoughts are true. Some of them, we have no idea where they come from. I'm sure we've all had those moments where we've had a thought and we're like, where did that come from? What is that about? That is completely untrue. And this can be applied to our relationship to our bodies. And we're conditioned that our thoughts reflect that conditioning. And when we have all these societal pressures for our bodies to look a certain way, to perform a certain way, and we recognize that our doesn't, that's when the mind starts to be the worst enemy. So in building relationship and working towards unconditional love, one thing that has really helped me is to recognize that there's not just two options, love or hate. It's either I love my body or I hate my body. I love this person or I hate this person. There's a third option that is enveloped in the love aspect. That is neutrality. Being in a neutral space in relationship to your body, to another person. And within that space of neutrality can come respect. I've taught this concept in the idea of cultivating unconditional love for other people. But this definitely applies to ourselves. So know that you don't have to be 100% in love with your body all the time. But if you can get to a place of neutrality, a place of recognizing, hey, I'm strong, I'm healthy, and or even just where whatever adjective you choose to describe, there's simply that. Words, but they don't have any pull on you negative. You're neutral. And one thing that helped me, or does help me, get to a place of neutrality with my body is taking a level of accountability. Knowing that my body is reacting to the things that I put in it and the things that I do with it, or don't put in it, or don't do with it. Of course, there are other circumstances. Neutrally respecting your body. You don't have to love it. You should always respect it. As you feel ready, first of all, take a moment to just check in. Checking in with the body, noticing any effects of your physical practice. Checking in with the mind. Checking in with the emotions, noticing any potential effects of your mindful practice. And gently starting to bring some movement back into your body. Eventually making your way to one side of the body if you are lying down and not already there. And gently pressing your way back up to a comfortable seat. I'll invite you to bring the hands to heart center or take any other meaningful gesture with the hands. Close the eyes, drop the chin towards the chest, and just take a moment to offer yourself some gratitude for carving out this time, for stepping on your mat, and some gratitude for your body for allowing you to do this practice.